This is a workshop meeting of the Flagler Beach City Commission. Today is Tuesday, August 31st. It is 5:30 exactly. This meeting will continue until all items are complete, and we do have a tentative end date at 7 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Mayor, if you could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, if everybody can just take a minute to look at their cell phones and make sure it is on silent vibrate or turned off, please. And this is a discussion on our fire truck and doing public workshop style. Commissioners and Mayor, I'd just like to chat with you all a little bit. The workshops are a little bit more informal, and this is geared for the public, and I wanted to make sure and see if there's a consensus of, if we have comments that if they go past their 3 minutes, if that's okay, or if we have, citizens that have different questions on different topics, like if they have more than one question, if everybody is okay with being more lax on that than a regular meeting. After all, this is for the citizens, and I think it would be good to make sure every concern gets properly vetted as well. Do you all have some thoughts on that?
As long as it doesn't get out of hand.
Correct. Right. Yeah, as long as we don't end up making this a midnight meeting. We do have an end time on this meeting. Yes. So we need to be sensitive of time. And we'll make sure we move along at a good clip too. Is everybody okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine. The only thing I'd request is that everyone keep in mind that we're all adults and we'll try to keep it as civil and cordial as possible. Not that anybody will, but we're just reminding everyone, because I know there's a lot of people that are very passionate about this subject. So I think we'd be all do well if we all just
Okay.
stand
So it sounds like we have a consensus, and for the public, to make sure that everybody gets their fair say. What we're doing is we're changing, meeting decorum a little bit. If somebody goes past their 3 minutes, we're going to allow that as long as it's reasonable. If a citizen has more than one question on different topics, we're going to allow that. Normally, stuff like that doesn't happen in a regular meeting. Citizens get one question and stuff like that. So we just want to run it a little bit more informal, because this is a workshop for you, and it's designed to get as much input as possible. And if we can all just be real cognizant of time and everything, so that way it doesn't drag out, we can have a good give and take there. And City Manager, did you want to start us off with an intro, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Our staff has prepared a presentation on the purchase of the truck, which is the subject of this workshop. With that, I'm going to ask Captain Cox if he will come forward and make his presentation. And I think that he's got a few comments, and then the chief may have a word or two, and then if we'll turn it back over to you for questions on the presentation, and then from there we'll go forward.
Good evening, everyone, to the board, city manager, and to the citizens of Flagler Beach. I first want to take the time to say thank you very much for having this type of meeting. I think it's very important for the Flagler Beach Fire Department to be very transparent on where we stand in the future of the department. So the objective today is to just give some information out on the purchase of a fire truck, potentially, and why. So I prepared a short presentation, and I would ask that any questions just be held to the end, and I will do my best to answer those. and we'll just get started.
Yeah, Stephen, we'll go first to the board for questions, and then the public will be allowed to make comments and ask questions after that.
Sounds good. So we'll get started. So,
And Captain, if you need to, you can even spin that a little bit. Yeah. Might make it easier for you.
pretty high tech here, huh? All right. So. All right. So before we start, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Stephen Cox. I am the fire captain with the City of Flagler Beach Fire Department. I started my career in 2005. I worked for my hometown, which was Winter Springs. I was picked up by Winter Springs Fire Department. I worked there from 2005 to 2009. They did merge with Seminole County, and I took the opportunity to move to the coast because I really like the salt water and the sunshine, and I was very fortunate to get picked up with the Flagler Beach Fire Department in 2010. I finished my AS degree in EMS at Seminole State College, and I'm currently enrolled with the University of Florida's program for fire emergency services with an emergency management specialization. So go Gators. Oh, they had a rough season last year, I understand. I hold a couple of certificates, as you can see, fire officer, I'm a paramedic, and some other stuff that I've obtained throughout my career. I am married to my beautiful wife, Ashley, and we have a 1.5-year-old son and 2 dogs, so keep me busy. I do enjoy fishing, traveling, and spending time with my family when I am away from the department. So just a brief history. We are the oldest fire department in Flagler County. We were established in 1926, and this is an actual photo of the first fire truck ever purchased. I promise you we're not asking for something like this, and it might be a little bit more expensive, but we were the original fire department in this area, and we responded to multiple emergencies throughout the county. We supplied fire protection for Bunnell and Flagler County and up to Marineland. And some records even show that there was a large fire in Daytona Beach, and they actually sent this truck down there. So we won't do that, I promise, unless they really, really need us. So. But we have evolved throughout the years. Today, we've grown from a volunteer fire company to a full paid career department. We still do have volunteer members within our agency. Currently, our ranks, we have a fire chief, the captain, a part-time fire marshal, 3 lieutenants, 3 driver engineers, 3 firefighters, 5 part-time firefighters, and 6 reserve members. And the department is currently led by Fire Chief Robert Pace. This is just an overview of our organizational chart. We run 3 shifts, A, B, and C. They are staffed 24/7. And you can see we have 3 firefighter, paramedic / EMTs on at all times. The mission statement of our organization is putting them first, which we will always put the public first. If you haven't been to the Firehouse, please come by. We'll have a hot cup of coffee for there waiting for you. We are located at 320 South Flagler Avenue. We have a very good relationship with Flagler County. They provide the ambulance. So we have staffing that ranges 5 to 7 people every day, dependent. So in 2020, we had a busy year. We report all of our incidents to the National Fire Incident Reporting System, which is NFIRS, and also the state. So I know that's kind of hard to see in the red, but we ran 1,440 calls last year. And we are continuing to see an increase every year just due to the population. And, Flagler Beach is a destination area, and it's becoming more popular. And we do have a responsibility to serve the visitors in this town. With the NFIRS, it breaks it down into 9 different categories. Category 1 is fire. We have overpressure, ruptures. 3 is rescue and EMS. About 70% of our calls are medical calls. We run hazmat, we run service calls. good intent calls, fire alarms, and then we have special incident types, which is the hurricanes and other things like that. So there is a company called ISO. It's the Insurance Service Office. And you can see here that the ISO, what they do is they provide a rating for all the fire departments in the United States. They do not set the insurance rates. That is the insurance responsibility, the provider. But what they do is they essentially give us a score, and they give us a rating based on all the fire equipment, the training, the staffing, the water supply. It goes into depth, and based on this score, it kind of is a reflection of how well your fire department is in the area. So when we had our ISO inspection, we went from a 5 to a 3. Now 10 is the worst. Okay, so we made a very good leap. So with that being said, according to ISO, Flagler Beach Fire Department falls in the top 10% of fire departments in the nation. So it was a huge thing for us, and it's a huge thing for the public. So again, some of the services provide, we've evolved from the horse and carriages and just putting the fires out. We do respond to fire still. Some of the largest fires happen in Flagler Beach. We respond to EMS calls, hazmat calls, marine rescue, wildland, disaster, elevators to, hey, I locked my keys out of my car, can you please unlock them? Which my wife did yesterday. If you're watching, all right. So as I stated before, we have had a lot of major incidents in this city, and I'm not even referring to the hurricanes. So a lot of structure fires here. We do have an older city. We have a lot of wood frame, and something that kind of hurts us, and it's a beauty, is the sea breeze. And the example I'll use is when you're trying to start a fire, if you're slowly breathing on that fire, that's how you get it, to go. And that sea breeze does fuel a lot of these fires that we have. So you can see all these photos here are incidents in Flagler Beach that we've run to. Yes, that is a plane on the bridge on fire. And I could add a lot more, but that's all we could fit on there. So just a rundown of our apparatus and what we respond, because there was a lot of questions with that. One of the questions I had was, are you going to staff all 3 trucks and try to have them respond at one time? No, that's not the case. We staff 3 people at all times. The other 2 trucks are reserve trucks or backups. Currently, the primary response apparatus is Ladder 11. You can't miss it. It's the biggest truck in town. I think we beat the trash truck, but we'll have to go back and measure. But we purchased that in 2016. It was 414 gallons of water it holds. We have a great hydrant system. We're very fortunate. It's got a 1,500 gallon minute pump, and it is staffed by 3 at all times. Our backup engine is a 2006 E1 pumper, and when we have maintenance or if we have something that we have to get repaired on the truck, our crews will transition into this apparatus. So you have probably seen it around town. And then we have our reserve engine, engine 111. This is a 1996 Pierce pumper. You'll see this at special events, or if our backup truck that we're in goes down, then we have an apparatus that we're able to transition to. The key is to always have a vehicle available if there's an emergency. The last thing we want to do is to have an emergency go out, and because we're down, we don't have a response. That would be detrimental to the city. So we ensure that we always have an apparatus for a response. And then we have our command vehicles, which you've seen around, and we try to say they're fire trucks, but we don't have water. They are for incident command purposes. So you've probably seen them on a couple of calls. So with the proposal is to replace engine 111. And here's a photo of that truck. So the way we look at it is, engine 111 is an older truck, but what we believe is that truck has served this city for 25 years. It's done a great service. It's been to a lot of calls. It's done a great job over the 25 years. Through preventative maintenance, daily upkeep, the fire department was able to extend the life of the apparatus. But due to age, condition use, and exposure to the elements, you can see that it's now presenting multiple safety concerns to the city. So we do have some rust, corrosion on that apparatus already. It's significant. Again, as far as the safety issues that we have, currently it is out of service. We have an air leak. In order to get that truck moving, we have to wait at least a minute for the air reservoir to rise back up to its safe point for it to move. We do have a leak in the tank, which we cannot hold much water in. The cab of the AC does not have AC. It is out. We took a infrared thermometer and we ended up calculating with the humidity. It was 115 degrees in the cab of that vehicle. So you can imagine our crews responding to a fire and then getting back in and try to get ready for response, and that's what they have. So, and along with that, we've got a lot of outdated safety features that do not meet the NFPA standards. So cost to repair and bring the apparatus to the current safety recommendations would cost more than the truck is currently valued, unfortunately. The latest trade-in value we received was $2,000 for that apparatus. Once a fire truck reaches 30 years old, the ISO will not recognize it as a fire truck. It is not existent. So the plan and the proposal is to replace the frontline apparatus with a 2020 Pierce Enforcer. So these are some of the features. It's a 750-gallon tank, which is more than sufficient for this city here. It's a 1250 pump. It's got all the current NFPA safety recommendations, and it meets all the standards. It will be coming fully stocked with equipment, and the custom cab features, they fit the needs of the city, even though it is a demo truck. So with the addition of the new fire engine, it would allow each piece of apparatus to be rotated, and engine 111, it would be retired from service. So as you can see in this slide here, the primary response apparatus would be staffed with a crew, and then the ladder truck would actually go into a backup/jump truck. And what that means is if a call goes out, we can make the determination if we need to jump into the ladder truck and go to the call. So if it's a multi-story building or a high-rise or something that would involve a high-angle rescue, we can make the determination to respond in that apparatus. But if it was something that didn't, we would be able to respond in the primary apparatus. So what it would do, it would preserve our truck. And that's vital to have that ladder truck in this city. It's proved its use over and over, but the intention is to preserve it. And then engine 11 currently would go into a reserve apparatus status. So again, the implementation would allow the Flagler Beach Fire Department to extend the life of ladder 11 as well as engine 11. And the department has been saving funds for this purchase since 2015. I will not get into the financials. My job is the operations of the department, but I will turn this presentation over to Chief Pace.
Good evening, board, Madam Mayor, residents, Flagler Beach, thanks for being here. I only have a few comments to add. I would first off like to thank Captain Cox for putting together a thorough presentation. So what do we know? We know that engine 111 is 25 years old. I recently had a conversation with Captain Cox, and I'm repeating myself a little bit, but he made a really good point. He kind of alluded to it in his presentation, but he stated to me, maybe the replacement of engine 111 is being viewed incorrectly by some. After all, the city has received 25 years of service from this truck, and this is very good. I would also like to say with as much confidence as possible to our community that our truck in question would make it to your families in a time of crisis. I cannot currently make that statement regarding engine 111. Adhering to a true depreciation and replacement plan has always been the goal of the department. I'd like to give credit to the city administration and the commission for making these allocations to fire truck reserves over 5 years ago. Over $400,000 has been accumulated in that time period. All of these funds were specifically earmarked for the purchase of the city's next fire engine. In addition, the 2 new developments on Roberts Road made a sizable donation of $63,000 to assist with the purchase. Mr. Whitson also had the forethought to request researching additional options. A demo truck was located, and that presented another $23,000 in savings. On October 1st, the new fire engine can be paid in full with no effect on the tax rate. Short and sweet, that's all I had. I appreciate everyone coming out, showing interest in public safety and your city. That's all I have. Thank you.
So, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman,
Captain. Thank
if
you,
y'all
Chief.
have questions of our staff first, be glad to entertain those.
Okay, commissioners or mayor? All right, Commissioner Mealy.
Either one of you, I'm not sure who would be best to answer this. We did receive a video today from one of the residents that talked about ISO. Did you see that video? No? Okay. Basically, what it explained the 1 to 10 ratings, and it claimed that between 1 and 6, there was no effect on insurance. And I'd like your response, because I just like your response.
Well, I would go to the fact that I think that the last numbers that we saw were from 2 to 4 was the same. Would you call that correct if you want to come up here?
Why don't you twist that back around, Steve?
Oh, yeah.
Captain.
So with ISO, again, ISO doesn't establish savings on insurance rates. That's up to the insurance carrier. So we called ISO. We've had some requests from the general public. Could you reach out to ISO and find out? And we did. ISO directed us to call, the specific insurance carriers. We did make contact with an individual who was an insurance representative in Daytona, and I asked him for his best estimate. His estimate that he gave to us was a community that has an ISO score between the ranges of 1 and 4, save estimated, I believe it was 30% on the insurance rates compared to out of that range. So again, we're reaching out to the insurance providers to try to obtain that information. And you might get something different from one insurance provider versus the other. So that's the best answer I could give you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
From your presentation, can I gather that, I think you said all 3 trucks will be fully equipped, so if there's a call comes in, you can decide without having to move the equipment between the trucks? Is that what you said?
That is correct. So all 3 trucks will be stocked with equipment. They will not be staffed, though.
But, yeah, no, I
So,
get that.
But on the positive side, with this community being coastal, we've had a lot of threats from hurricanes, and we've had some that's crossed through. Combine that with special events such as the 4th of July. During those times, we do have all 3 trucks in service. We do have to bring additional staffing in. And the way we do is we break the city up into 3 different zones. We have a truck on the north side, a truck on the south side, and a truck on the west side. So we have 100% coverage on these large-scale events. And we feel that that's the best approach when providing public safety to the citizens because, we've all been here for 4th of July and we've seen the traffic. And to try to get a truck from the north side to the south side, the response would be just extremely extended. So by utilizing that deployment, we're able to reduce our response times to provide 100% coverage. So.
Okay, thank you. And I just would like to make a statement that the commission over the last several years has worked on planning a rotation of buying vehicles in every department. Police department, I believe we buy 3 2 or 3 a year. We rotate the old ones out. Do the same thing with the garbage trucks, with the trucks at the wastewater plant and the maintenance trucks. And so we've been planning for this one for the last 4 years. But this would be year 5. So just a statement that this is not unusual to be replacing old equipment. And I'm done for now.
Okay, Commissioner Phillips?
2 questions. The demo truck, how many miles are on the demo truck?
Approximately right now is 3,000 miles on that truck.
Okay, and then my second question is, and I'd like Captain Cox to answer this because I asked him this yesterday. Can you explain why we need 3 apparatus versus 2?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a twofold approach. You know, we don't do everything based on ISO. We do what's best for the community. ISO does help the community, and ISO does state that you're supposed to have 2 pumpers, 2 engines, a primary and a reserve. The ladder truck is something that we made the decision to move forward with it a couple years ago because we have so many 3-story houses and high-rises in this area. That is a need for us to have. And it is proved on the south end last year on the fire on South 20th Street, we would have lost the adjacent house if it was not for that ladder truck. And I fear that it could have extended further. And that is just one of the many scenarios that's presented with that apparatus. So the other thing is, again, as I stated, if we have a mechanical failure or something like the other day, we had a crews on a call where a stick went through the sidewall of the tire, just something totally out of the ordinary. That truck is now out of service and now they're in that backup. We still have to ensure that we have a backup for that backup, because if we're in the backup apparatus and it goes out of service, we don't have anything else and there's no response. So to answer your question, hopefully that was sufficient. That's the reason we've taken the approach.
No, that's perfect. I just, and is it a true statement that the county, we are the only ladder truck in the county, so for mutual aid, we bring out that ladder truck if need be? Is that a true statement?
No, that is not. The
Okay.
other organization that has a ladder truck is Palm Coast Fire Department.
Okay.
Their closest ladder truck is Station 25 off of Belterre by the Publix.
Okay. Thank you.
So,
No, thank you.
yes, ma'am.
That's it, Commissioner Phillips?
Yes.
Okay, Mayor Johnston?
All right, I have several questions because this would single-handedly possibly be the most expensive thing that I would help purchase. So the backup for the backup, could the county help if you have truck 1's in the shop, truck 2's now gone to position 1, and now you need a backup? Is that a truck that could be borrowed from county if we find yourself in that situation?
Madam Mayor, I spoke to Mr. Whitson about this earlier. That's obviously, and Captain Cox has described it, a situation that we do not want to be in. The question was also posed of why do we have 3 fire trucks in our individual station? Keeping in mind, that is the single station house for the city. That is all our fire suppression equipment that we have for the city. So we would like, if we do have a problem or an issue, as Captain Cox described, be able to roll into another truck. The county, albeit that they have multiple trucks, they don't have 2 or 3 trucks at each station house. They may have a truck and a rescue. They may have some trucks in a reserve. The thing I spoke with Mr. Whitson about is we did at one point, since I've been chief, go down with all 3 trucks. And we did not take a loan from the county. We took a loan from Palm Coast. But as a fire administrator for this city, that is a cardinal sin for me. We want to keep our trucks up, our trucks moving, and service our residents with our equipment, if that answers your question.
Okay, that was just one of my questions.
And don't forget the delay that happens when you're coordinating across jurisdictional lines.
Okay, my next question is, in the paperwork that you gave us, Palm Coast replaces their fire trucks on a 12-year plan. What is Flagler Beach's year plan?
Well, where we are right now, and keeping in mind with the purchase of ladder 11, we were replacing a used ladder truck that was 30 years old. So that's when it was really painful, and $568,000 came out of infrastructure. But the reserves started at that point, and the reserves started to increase each year. We had planned in 2014 to get to this point now to replace the engine 111. Of course, there was still a shortfall that we were pulling from infrastructure. What our goal is now is to look at a 6-7 year mark, possibly still evaluating our trucks, but keeping in mind that we want to have the reserves in full before we make a purchase again.
Okay, because I did some math and you're looking at, the backup, or the current backup is 10 years to get to the 25 years. Then you've got, the new truck would be 25 years, the ladder truck, you've got 20 years. So I was looking at thinking going forward with the budget, so you would anticipate to continue adding in that amount of reserve.
I'm looking at the next truck to be replaced being engine 11. If we stick to a 6-7 year timeline, that truck would be 22 years old. What we're trying to get to is not a 12-year mark. We don't feel that feasible for the city. What we do feel is acceptable and feasible for the city is to have a 15 to 20 year window for replacement. So if we find the truck in good repair after the 15-year mark, we could still roll that truck. But we do not want, as a standard, to exceed 20 years. That is our goal in the depreciation plan.
Okay, so with that, if you go with the depreciation plan of 15 to 20 years, would you have a higher trade-in value compared to what the Pierce pumper is right now of just $2,000?
Quite possibly. I mean, I can't speak exactly to those numbers, but obviously less time wear and tear on the truck, it may hold more value. I mean, that truck may be a godsend to a volunteer fire department somewhere that could use that. So, but we're, again, and Captain Cox showed you some of the wear and tear on this truck, and we're talking 25 years old. So as a standard in the industry, $2,000 trade-in is about what you're going to get.
Okay, that's all I have for right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Bryan or Commissioner Bellier?
I have 3 questions, and one of them was already answered regarding the cycling out of vehicles in other departments. So Commissioner Maley covered that. Briefly, what is the normal day with the firefighters at the firehouse? I mean, in other words, what are you doing when you're there on a normal day?
Yeah, I just been working on a report on some of the requests that Mr. Whitson had been put out, but and I've got something that'll be coming out here in the next couple of days, but I can give you a short summary of that. First and foremost, when the firefighters come in every morning, the first thing that they do is start to check their trucks off and check all the equipment within the trucks, knowing that they cannot respond to a call unless all their equipment is in good working order. In addition to that, there's a cleaning assignment every day for the crews. So they have a different truck that we call it's a detail day. They're cleaning the compartments, they're cleaning the truck, they're checking all the fluids, everything for that truck. So every truck and every boat, every piece of equipment we have has a day through the 7-day week. Further than that, a big part of their day is training. We talk about training. You know, these folks need to be prepared for a multitude of emergency calls. So however we can incorporate that in, whether that's water rescue training, whether that's brush fire training, structure fire, EMS tabletop scenarios. We've just incorporated in this last year, which Captain Cox is a part of, a drone team. So these folks are doing a gamut of training, preparing themselves for any situation that they may come into. We do that both internally and we do that externally. We hold a high standard, being that we're a small staff. Within the first year, we expect our rookie firefighters to become state certified driver engineers, aerial operators, and at least start their fire officer 1 classes. And the reason we do that is the next man or woman up mentality. If somebody's off, that person in a lower level or junior level can move up to the next seat and take that role. The last thing I would say in a daily operation is we preach pride in our house. The station house is not only their operations center, it's where they live every 3rd day. And if they're working overtime, they may see their coworkers more than they see their families. So with that, it's drilled into a firefighter's head, take pride in your station house. There's cleaning duties and responsibilities that go throughout the house daily. And one other thing I would add is we want our folks fit. If they've gotten all these tasks and everything done in a day, we don't balk at them working out and training. We want them physically fit and in cardio, and cardiac is what's killing firefighters. So we want our folks ready and at the ready at any given time.
Okay, so it's very similar to what we did in the military.
Very similar.
Okay. Next question I had was, what would be the possible concerns or issues if we do not have the truck? In other words, we talked about possible response time, or just what would happen. If we don't have the truck, what are the possible conditions that could exist?
Well, you know, the thing is, when I keep coming back to depreciation, and we've done fairly well with the ladder. We have had some repairs over the last 6 or so years. The plan with the depreciation replacement plan is, and if we're adhering to it, we want to buy preservation for these trucks. So if we can move the ladder into a backup role, but again, as Captain Cox had hit on, it's still available for specific calls, elevated water stream, high angle pickoffs, whatever that truck may need to be doing, but it's not going stop and go, which is what really beats these trucks up all day, every day. So there's the preservation of the truck, for one. The second thing that I would mention is the one thing that we've kind of already hit on. Albeit it's not something that we're very thrilled to have to talk about, but there's a lot of moving parts on these trucks. We all like to have at the department, the availability of 3 rigs. And that's come up many times. And then, you know, and again, I'm hitting on a point that the captain hit on, but when we get into the unknowns, when we get into, you know, block structure fires, tornadoes, hurricanes, we want those units available. We're going to mandate everybody to come into house, and we want to cover our city. We need the units there as well for that.
Okay, and my last question has to do with the calls. It indicated there's over 1,100 calls.
1,400.
1,400, okay.
Yes.
So I assume those are medical type calls that you're having?
That would be all calls,
All
Commissioner.
calls?
Yeah. Captain Cox kind of gave you the breakdown, and you saw the 9 call types that he displayed in the slide. But that's medical, fire, hazmat, anything that the folks, water rescue, brush fire. So.
Okay, and then the last part of that same question is, some of the things that we talked about is that the backup, I assume, is going to be Flagler County or Palm Coast. What would be the response time if, for example, you had someone down on the southern part of our city here, and we were calling for a backup, or it could be right here, we're calling for a backup from Flagler County? What is the timeline it's going to take for them to get here if there's a situation with someone having a heart attack or stroke or whatever?
Well, I can't give you an exact time, but I can tell you for us specifically within the cities, we're running under 6 minutes. NFPA recommendations is not to exceed 8. If you're bringing in Flagler County from the airport or the Hammock or Old Dixie, my guesstimation would be they would be bordering that more of a lengthy 7 to 8 minute response time, if they can make that.
Okay, all right, because I know that minutes are critical when
They are critical, yes,
situation
sir.
like that. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Belhumeur.
Chief, is the ladder truck considered a pumper?
It's considered an aerial. The pumpers are the ones that we're talking about, fire engines. It typically carries 750 to 1,000 gallons of water.
So, okay. So I think you were hitting on this a little bit with your proposed scenario. When do you expect to be asking to replace engine 11?
Well, you know, the thing about it is we have a window of 7 years is what we're looking at from this point. If we can extend that, if we can go another year or two, we can evaluate it at that time. But we would like, obviously, this year's contribution to the fire truck reserve would be needed for the purchase of the new fire engine. But the request would go through workshops next year that the fire truck reserve be started again, and that would kind of start the timeline looking at the ballpark of 7 years.
So we'd have three fire trucks on a replacement schedule.
They will all be on a replacement schedule. Keeping in mind that 15 to 20 year replacement plan that we're going to attempt to adhere to.
So how much would we have to put away each year
My
to keep
request
3
is,
trucks on a replacement schedule.
my request come in through workshops next year, and I'd have to talk with Mr. Woodson about it, but we had started the 100,000 a year. I would request that happen again.
Excuse me. We're going to talk about ISO in
Correct.
another part of this.
Yeah, that's another agenda
correct?
item.
Okay.
Yep.
So even if you have 3 trucks in the station and your crew's out responding to a fire in Palm Coast or Bunnell or somewhere else in the county, who would respond to a fire here?
Well, that's where your automatic aid would come into play. So it would be someone from the county, possibly Palm Coast.
So 3 trucks doesn't help us at all in that situation.
Well, if we're out and about and we get something else where we needed an additional truck, the only thing that I could say to you in that situation, if it was more water supply, if it was additional manpower, additional equipment, we do lean on the services of some of our volunteer members that are in the role of driver operator that could bring another rig to us. But that's not, an everyday occurrence.
That's all I got for now.
That's it? You got 2 pages of
I
notes?
got lots of pages here, but I'm going to, they're my questions for now.
Okay, questions I got. When was the last time you were in a scenario where the backup to the backup was called into service on a call?
Where we went to engine 111?
Correct.
Or
Well, you had, let's say, because you talk about, let's say, hypothetically, your main truck goes down, and then you have to use your backup, and then your backup to your backup. When was the last time that scenario happened?
I would have to say the reserve being utilized was probably a year and a half ago. We had to take that loaner from Palm Coast that I described earlier.
And I know that during Irma, it was extensively used. For instance, engine 111, which is the old truck,
Right.
was key to getting that whole golf course area where the condos are, Ocean Palm area,
Right.
pumped out because the tubes clogged and they couldn't get it drained out. And
just to hit on that, Commissioner, what the mindset was and will be, it's going to be our standard practice now. If we're in the midst of a post-storm and we're doing cut and toss or we have flooded areas, we put our oldest truck out there to run those calls because obvious water damage and other things that we can, endure with that. In addition to that, we've requested and have a current request standing with Palm Coast that we would take a high water vehicle into the city, and that would be our approach. I bring that up to say that the same would be the approach if engine 11 moves to the backup, or to the reserve role. We would use our oldest truck much like we did with engine 111 in the times you're describing.
okay, so the last time this scenario happened was when you had to bring in Palm Coast because you had multiple units down. Do you know of a time before that? Because I'm trying to get an idea of frequency.
Well, I mean, we've had times where we're moving to the backup, and then maybe the backup had something minor happen to it, like he described earlier, a tire, and we've gone to the other truck for a short time. That's happened multiple times over the years. To give you exact timelines or specifics, it's happened.
Okay. So the backup to the backup doesn't get used a whole lot, but it does get used. So let's say, and I'm just kind of running through a hypothetical scenario. So engine 11, which is, that's the one that you got with the Mercedes drivetrain in it. That one seems to have quite a bit of time ahead of it before it needs replaced. It's a good unit. What if the replacement of that unit was to get delayed? We know that, for instance, engine 111, the 1996 model, that has a fair share of problems.
Right.
The other one does not. And what if that got pushed further out into the schedule? And so we delayed, getting the trucks a little bit.
As it stands right now, and neither one of us have a crystal ball, I don't have an issue talking that could we reevaluate that truck at that time, and if it's in good working order, could we extend out a couple of years? I don't have a problem doing that, but again, I can't speak to 7-8 years from now what that truck is going to be. Now, again, we are buying preservation for that truck because it's not going to be going stop and go every day, and if we can do that at that time, we're open to that.
All right, that's all the questions I got for now. City Manager, did you have anything?
Well, the only thing I had was that we prepared a fact sheet and we have copies available. I think we sent out some in advance of the workshop, but I think we provided those to you, and I think we have some extra copies with over there, so.
Okay, and Penny, is there any in that little bin over there? Where the?
They're in front of Bobby on the podium.
Okay,
Sure.
all right, and so Commissioners, Mayor, do you
I
have
have
any?
one more.
Okay, go ahead.
Bobby,
Yes, ma'am.
I know that in our weekly reports that you provide to us,
Yes, ma'am.
we get all the numbers of what the calls were, and thank you. I'm sure Steve puts that together, so thank you. One of the criticisms that we've received was that in the ISO report from 3 years ago, 2018, that the training was pitiful. In your weekly reports, you always talk about this firefighter went and did this, or as a group, we trained in that. And you addressed it somewhat before.
Yes,
Could
ma'am.
you go into more detail, please?
Yeah, and I'm probably going to bring Captain Cox to take the backside of this question too, but let me jump in on the front side of it. Captain Cox and I just had this conversation this morning. Unfortunately, in that last inspection cycle, and we hadn't done one prior to that since 2011. I was a firefighter at the time. We were still finding our way. When we did the 2018 inspection, some of our data was not inputted correctly into the training section of the report. So we did not get all the credit, and I'm going to let him speak a little bit more specifically to that. But one of the other things that we found out going through that inspection cycle was we took a hit sometimes with facility training, with the guys being able to go to a burn tower or a flashover simulator or somewhere where they can get active fire training. What was determined in that last inspection, if we can have a 2-acre piece of property or even a house on a property and we're deploying hose line, we get our facility training credit from those type of things. In addition to that, we have got an agreement with the county now that we can utilize the county training tower at points. So that's a definite improvement. I would like to bring Captain Cox up to speak a little bit further on how that data was inputted in 2018.
I know you used the house across the street from me before it was demolished
Right.
as a training place. That was creepy.
Yes, I can easily explain that question. As Chief Pace stated before, when the ISO inspection came through, we had a completely new fire administration, and it was our first time where we sat through an ISO inspection. The way ISO works is they don't just come at that moment in time and say, what do you have, recently? They look through the past records that you have. Unfortunately, we took the training that we have and we put it in the wrong category. And the statement from the ISO rep is, I can't believe how much training your men and women have, but it really hurts me to, give you, a negative point on this because it was classified wrong. And we made, and I'll take responsibility for that, we made that wrong classification. We had so much company training he was just amazed, but the company training that they had was also part of the facility training, but we never inputted it into that section. And that's in the past, and we can cry about it and stomp our feet, but that's a learning moment for us. And we have a program now called Target Solutions that it has the set standards that we need to hit each year. And every year we hit those standards and we make sure that we don't make that same mistake again. And we use that as a learning point to make sure that from the future on, we don't make that same mistake twice. So as far as the training, our staff is some of the most trained staff in this region. I'm very proud of them. But unfortunately, we categorized it wrong, and it was an error on our part. So it will not happen again, I assure you that.
I just wanted you to explain. I know, like I said, from reading your reports, I know that there's a lot of training going on. I just wanted it brought out. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we got to get our public going here. This is for them. Chief and Captain, did y'all want to sit where the mics are, possibly where staff would sit? I think that might be helpful. And I'd like to open this up to public comment. So any folks that would like to either ask a question or make a comment, please come on up. And if you can, start with your name and address. And just as housekeeping, standard housekeeping for any meeting, if y'all can make sure that we don't have any applause or any boos or anything like that, we want to be able to have people speak freely. All right, come on up. If you can, just start with your name and address, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Paul Allen. I'm a resident here on South Daytona Ave. Let me start up by saying I'm not an anti-fire, I'm pro-fire. I was in the fire service for over 30 years, starting as a junior firefighter, rising to the rank of department chief, for which I have been directly involved in numerous purchases of fire apparatus. I worked for the state of New Jersey, State Fire Marshal's Office for over 27 years, directly responsible for code enforcement, fire department services, and emergency incident responses throughout the state. This data presented to demonstrate the number of incidents versus the number of structure fires that the Flagler Beach Fire Department responded to. In 2019, the fire department responded to 28 calls and 463 medical assist calls. And in 2020, they responded to 37 fire calls and 446 medical assist calls. The charts are in the booklets that everyone should have received. Fire trucks are being used mostly for medical assists. It must be noted that the Flagler County firefighters run medical calls out of the Flagler Beach Fire Station. Because of our size of our crews, the fire truck must also go on medical calls and assist all other calls in case there is a fire. Although this practice is used in departments as small as ours, there are other ways to deliver assistance calls rather than bringing a large pumper or ladder truck. Other delivery models are available and used nationwide to keep costs and wear and tear on the fire trucks low. Flagler Beach Fire Department should be interested in looking into innovative approaches on how they deliver services while saving money and reducing the wear and tear on the frontline equipment. There are 1,284 incidents in 2019, including out-of-city incidents. Engine 11 was used in 79 incidents. Engine 111, the reserve engine, was used in 3 incidents. There were 1,454 incidents in 2020. Engine 11 was used in 55 incidents. Engine 111 was used in 2 incidents. Incidents may include many things, as you can see in the charts that you were given. Engine 111 currently sits in the fire station unable to respond to a dispatch and has not been able to respond to a call for years. Therefore, it's not needed. Engine 11 is used when ladder 11 is out of service. See CAD summary and CAD reports proving that engine 111 has not been dispatched. And in no structure fire has there been more than one engine reported from Flagler Fleet. Why are we replacing vehicles that are not being used to extinguish fires? The backup is needed in the event of the frontline vehicle is in for service. There are times when the frontline vehicle is out of the station and in for service. There's many times when the frontline vehicle is out of the station and out of service for days. This is part of maintaining your equipment. Maintenance is key. Does the backup fire truck really need to be $550,000? And I'd just like to comment that there was a group of concerned citizens that met, and we asked them to meet with some commissioners, and I'd like to thank you for meeting with us. It was very informative, and City Manager Whitson, thank you, and Captain Cox also met with us, so thank you for meeting with us.
Okay, thank you. Ken, just state your name and address.
Kim Carney, Flagler Beach. I'm on item 1B in your booklet that was given to you. In the 2021-22 budget book, there is a justification for replacing engine 111 based on the impact on the ISO rating, which is discussed in the next agenda item, and as well as the fact that the department feels it is, quote, deemed unreliable for day-to-day usage. End of quote. Engine 111 is 25 years old. It has 3,163 operational hours, which is equivalent to 126 hours of use per year, operational use. And it required $3,100 in maintenance in 2020. Is that enough justification to replace a vehicle? Age is not the number one reason to replace, although this equipment should be put out of service like the Ariel was 5 years ago. The lack of fire truck replacement plan is the reason the fleet is so old. Ladder 11 or Engine 11 have provided service to the residents of Flagler Beach and the surrounding areas for years, as noted in the Flagler Beach Police Fire Department budget information sheet. There is no need to replace engine 111. 1C, my comments are, NFPA standards are not met for one truck, never mind 3 trucks. NFPA publishes staffing standards. NFPA 523 operating units. Fire company staffing required shall be based on the minimum level necessary for safe, effective, and efficient emergency operations. Whether Flagler Beach Fire Department used a pumper or the Quint to respond to a fire, they cannot meet either one of those standards. NFPA 1710 engine companies shall be staffed with a minimum of 4. Ladder companies shall be staffed with a minimum of 4 on-duty members. Flagler County 911 dispatch knows the staffing minimums are not met in Flagler Beach. They do not dispatch but 1 fire engine from Flagler Beach. In a recent email to the city manager, Chief Pace wrote, quote, in a perfect world, every engine or ladder company would like to roll out their bays with 4 or 5 firefighters on board. Keeping in mind, once again, NFPA provides recommendations. So recommendations work sometimes, but they don't work other times. It just seems to be a little bit uncohesive. Flagler Beach Fire Department has worked tirelessly over the years to increase their crew size to 3 firefighters. Being good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars and recognizing the size of the city, responding to emergency calls has been accomplished successfully using a crew of 3. The fire chief recognizes Flagler Beach does not fully staff the vehicles, and we only have staff for 1 fire company and 1 fire truck. So why do we need 3?
Okay, thank you. Kim, please state your name and address.
Jim Carney, Flagler Beach. The organizational chart provided and used from the Flagler Beach Fire Department Facebook page shows this level of staffing. And the focus is on taxpayer dollars, then why do we need a fleet of 3 trucks? ISO did not give full credit for personnel because the fire trucks, no matter how many the department has, cannot be fully staffed. It appears the Flagler Beach Fire Department wants a new truck to respond to emergency medical calls, not fire calls. E111 did not respond to any structure fires in 2019 or 20. Let me repeat that. It responded to 0 fire calls in 2019 and 2020. Dispatch will not send more than 1 fire truck from Flagler Beach because we can't even fully staff the one that they get. Just as aging apparatus is a liability, so is an understaffed truck. We are asking you to remove E111 from the fleet and replace E11 in 5 years. Other than a 5-year capital equipment plan for the city, there is no published fire equipment replacement schedule showing 15, 12, or even 10-year replacement for trucks, apparatus, radios, SCBA, and things of that nature. This seems to be a haphazard approach to funding and future planning. Assuming the Pierce is purchased and E11 is next, the city will need to accrue $362,800 per year for the next 5 years and $297,900 for the next 7 years. After that, to meet the financial obligation of replacing 3 vehicles every 12 years, and that will continue to be such as long as the 12-year ranking is being used. However, 12 years could also be a conversation for a separate meeting. Also included in your packet is a single page showing the impact to the infrastructure surtax account balance that will barely keep up with the necessary funding. If the fire department continues to fund trucks and equipment the way they are with 3 trucks, the infrastructure surtax account will not sustain future purchases. There is a lot of discussion as to whether or not the infrastructure surtax funds are our tax dollars. That really depends on who you talk to.
All right, thank you. Next speaker, if you can, please state your name and address.
Donna Schneider, South Daytona Avenue, Flagler Beach. I'm on item E, 1E, excuse me. In the proposed budget, new fire truck justification under funding, Chief Pate states, quote, "All reserves come from infrastructure surtax, no effect on the mill rate," end of quote. You can see the chart provided in your packet, tagged agenda item number 3, section 1E. It shows $2,188,745 in state revenue, including income from interest, from 2010 to 2021. Of that revenue, 64%, or $1,395,478 is spent by the Flagler Beach Fire Department on equipment and trucks. In addition to the fire truck funding, the fire department budget summary also shows a long list of other equipment that needs to be replaced. In the 5-year capital plan, $69,000 a year is taken from the unrestricted fund, again, not from the general budget. Again, they can say this funding doesn't come from the millage rate. The fire squad is very expensive. Having a fleet of 3 trucks is not needed. It's too expensive for a city the size of Flagler Beach. I'm going to move on to 1F. There are other uses for the infrastructure account. If it's used solely to purchase fire trucks, when the need arises to make other purchases in other areas of the city, the infrastructure funds have already been dedicated to purchase fire trucks. So there will eventually be an impact to both the general fund and the millage rate. Finally, Flagler Beach Fire Department is not able to act independently of structure fires. There will always be a need to depend on the county and Palm Coast for additional support. They are necessary to provide the manpower and the apparatus required on all structure calls. All municipalities must work together to provide an efficient, safe response to all structure fires. The 911 dispatch in the sheriff's operations is the sole source of emergency response in the county. Flagler County provides the ambulance and the paramedics required for medical emergencies for both our station and outside our station. They also provide fire suppression apparatus. Flagler Beach Fire Department provides fire suppression and assistance. We're not staffed to operate multiple trucks. We can't afford to fund more personnel, more shifts, a captain, a chief, and all the other equipment that's needed to fight structure fires alone. We must depend on the county and Palm Coast for any structure fire for the safety of our citizens.
All right, thank you. Our next speaker, if you can, state your name and address.
Don Peterson, I live on North Central. I've been here about 9 years. I did my career in the Hampton, Virginia Fire Department, 27 years there. So I'd like to relate a few things about the pump related to my experience. The station I was in charge of was very much like Flagler Beach. It was a beach community, more people than here, but in our station we had one frontline pump and one reserve pump. There were 11 stations in Hampton. All stations had one frontline pump and one reserve pump. We used 20 years as how long a pump would last. So in the case of Flagler Beach, I think we need 2 pumps that are serviceable. If we do need 2 pumps and we're using 20 years to replace them, we need to be on a 10-year schedule. We need to be putting the money aside to buy a new pump every 10 years. And that's what it seems like it's coming down to here is, do we need 2 pumps or do we need 3 pumps? You have your frontline pump and you have a reserve pump, and then you want a reserve to the reserve, and then you want a reserve to the reserve. How far do you want to carry that? So that's what it seems like. That's what it's all coming down to. In my experience, we need a frontline pump that's serviceable and a reserve pump that's serviceable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak or have a question? Come on up, just please state your name and address.
Mary Lauk, 1601 North Central. I don't have a lot of technical experience with fire departments, but if either Chief Pace, if you could help me, or Captain Cox, I understand the pumps, but I thought the third truck isn't considered a pump, it's an aerial.
That is correct.
What's the difference?
Well, aerial truck is a very specific unit used for special features. I mean, we use it as a pumper, but it has less of a tank capacity than a pumper would. Typically, a pumper would have 750 to 1,000 gallons. Now, what Captain Cox brought up earlier, when that purchase of the ladder came through, we based it on a few things, and it was replacement, depreciation, what have you, but we also recognized the fact from the South County line to the North County or city line, South City line to the North City line, we have 77 three-story structures on A1A alone. That's not counting our high-rise units, which you live in one, and the others on the south end of town. For that point alone, we wanted to we needed a new truck that was versatile, that could run our medical calls, could do structure protection for brush fires, could run your typical hazmat calls, what have you. But we have that feature, that availability open, accessible to us at any time, being that it could be an elevated water stream, angle pickoffs, vertical ventilation, and it's been used since we've had that truck in service more times than I can just tell you off the top of my head. But to speak to your initial question, yes, we have 2 pumpers, but we also have an aerial unit that is capable of fire suppression and the other tasks that I mentioned to you as well.
But you're looking to replace the pumper with a
We're
pumper.
looking to replace the 25-year-old pumper.
So you'd have 2 pumpers.
We would
and
have
an
2
aerial.
pumpers.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
2 pumpers and an aerial, and the aerial is because of the unique features of this city with higher level buildings.
Okay. Is there a cost difference from operating a ladder truck to a pumper truck?
I mean, you have some variables that play into it. The ladder has a aerial inspection that it has to go through every year, so obviously there's a cost with that. But then when you get down to the nuts and bolts of a fire truck, it's got an annual pump test, it's got annual ground ladder test, its extrication gets tested. The cost of the fuels are comparable. So outside of testing that aerial, they're comparable in cost to run them.
Okay. And then one other question is, if we do not purchase the truck at this point in time, what happens to the $63,000 from the developers?
That's out of my pay grade.
That's a legal question, and I don't know if they'd want their money back or what, but they made the contribution because there's growth happening, and they desire the service to their new growth. So I don't know I don't want to go there, but I don't know what would happen. It would have to be a legal issue.
But we're basing information that was presented today on numbers from 2019 and 2020. Yet we're talking about developers developing on John Anderson and areas that we were going to have to support. Our fire department is going to have to support. So I'm just going to say what I'm going to say is I support our fire department. And if our fire department says we need a truck and we've got the money, let's get the truck. Let's get it in operational and let's move forward.
And as
Thank
the
you.
new guy, that was kind of where I was. We were in the middle of a pandemic. My experts tell me they need equipment. They know this is city. They know what they do each and every day. I'm going to support them.
I have a 2004 car. It's my father-in-law's, was my father's. It's a little sentimental value. But I will tell you, every time something breaks, it gets harder and more expensive to fix. It's harder to find the parts. And that's a car. I can't imagine what a fire truck would be. So thank you for your time, and I say let's support our fire department. Thank you.
Okay, any other folks wish to speak on this? If you can, come on up and please state your name and address.
A little short here. Janet Yarone, North Central. I second what you said. I just absolutely have to support these people who have this. I've lived all over the world. My background is in healthcare. I have watched the responses of the ambulances and the fire trucks, and I have to credit you for the training and for what they're doing. It's superb. I taught the ambulance drivers in Manhattan, and that is a nightmare, and I don't think most people understand that when you have a call, you get the call, you have no idea what you're going to find when you get there. It could be something completely different. Arguing about if we didn't have the money, I could understand it, but we are fortunate enough to have planned and to have the money for a third vehicle. I don't think anybody here, as you said, is driving a car that's 25 years old. I defy anyone to say that they do. So I want to credit what I've seen. I think Flagler Beach I love it here. I think it's a wonderful little town. I think it's being it's not without its problems. There's just no such thing. But the care, the attention, the willingness of the commissioners to explain and spend time with us is very much appreciated. And I want to credit the fire department and the police department. I understand the chief is not here, but I want to thank you, and I absolutely second what you said.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this topic or have questions? No? We have another agenda item we can cover. Commissioners or Mayor, before we move on, does anybody have any questions?
I do.
Mayor Johnston?
This is just a question because I don't have the knowledge on this, and I'm sure if I don't, there's half of a town doesn't either. The aerial truck and the ladder truck, since they are purchased for high rises, do both of those trucks get to the top of all of our high rises with water?
Well, first of all, the aerial truck is the ladder truck. Aerial is ladder 11. But where we're at with the Leaky, it's got a parking garage, and that one we would have some issues. We could park in the road and get about 4 balconies up, and that's the best we can do on that building. Now, if you talk about the Nautilus and Ocean View South, which are 9-story buildings, we can go in reverse, back in on that front ramp, and we can get as high as the 7th balcony, which is good for pickoffs and removing people from that building. The other condos that we deal with in the city and the 3-story structures that we have throughout the city, we're more than capable.
And both of the new truck and the ladder truck could both do the 3-story buildings, correct?
Well, the new truck would be a pumper. I mean, it can respond to a building, but if we got a 3-story a three-story structure that was an active fire. This is what Captain Cox was speaking to earlier. The lieutenants could actually discern between which truck that they would take at the time. So if you could imagine their bunker gear being stacked between two trucks, if it's a standard medical call or just a typical structure fire, they could take the pumper. If this is a fire that's vented itself through the roof and it's a higher structure, then they need to move their gear to that ladder truck and take that ladder truck to that call.
Okay. And then I have another question. I don't buy new cars.
Yes.
Do they sell fire trucks that are like 5 years old that, you depreciate when you roll
They're
off
out
the
there.
lot?
There's a service, there's a periodical that comes out that's called Brindley Mountain, and they constantly, there's dealers out there that sell used fire trucks. I'm kind of in the belief that if something is a used fire truck and it's only that many years old, 4 or 5 years old, that you're buying somebody else's problems. You're inheriting somebody else's problem. What we've done with this truck, and on the request of Mr. Whitson, this is not a custom-built truck from square one going down the line. This is a demo model, which we've got significant savings in that, but it's not 5 years old. It's a little over a year old.
Okay, because my next question would be for Mr. Whitson. If we could do a used truck, because I started doing my own math with the replacement plan and looking about how much per budget we would have to put in to replace all 3 trucks on that 12 to 17 year plan, that if we could do a used truck as a backup truck, would the developer allow us to roll the funds into a used truck? Or did they put stipulations?
They did not put any stipulations on their contribution. I suggested we do this because I'd had successful experience in another community doing the same thing. And we were, again, fortunate to be able to kind of come up with a model here. Is only a year old. It was the same situation with the other purchase in the other community, and a year old, okay. But as the chief said, when you're getting into older models, then you're just really buying somebody else's problems, and I wouldn't be for that. What we were trying to do was save as much money as we could, be as economical as we could in making this investment, and then of course the developer contribution was in addition to what we were putting away in our savings account.
Would the and I'm sorry I asked so many questions, but when I have a household purchase, I run through the gamut of every single side. Essentially going on the new plan of wanting to replace a truck every 15 to 20 years, you're going to have 2 trucks that are going to be coming up relatively quick. Would you be open to purchasing any trucks? I just keep thinking about this budget and how now we're going to have over $1 million needed to purchase a truck at one point in time, because we have that 2006 truck and then we have the 2016 ladder truck.
Yeah, but the spacing there, and if we're using the rough figure that I threw out a little earlier when I was at the podium, the 2006 truck, if we're looking at a 7 to 8 year mark roughly to be reevaluated, we're not looking at the ladder until another 8 years after that. So the spacing there and the time to build reserves is more than adequate.
So that 15-year-old truck you would plan to keep significantly longer.
Now, and I've put a couple reports out about this. The goal eventually is to get to within that 15, 20-year window. If we're at that 20-year mark and we can buy another year or two, fine. But as we're looking at engine 11 to let reserves build up again, it's not going to be within that 15, 20-year window, even as it stands right now. You're going to be looking more at 22 to 23 years. Now, when you look at ladder 11, that truck, if it's an 8-year mark after that we start reserves again to build that truck, it will be the first truck to hit a 20-year mark. But we've got to work to get to that point. We had to start somewhere. So I'm saying the ultimate goal, the long-term goal, be a 15 to 20-year window. Are we going to exceed that with the next purchase? Yeah, we will. Will we get closer with the ladder? We certainly will.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioners?
I have a couple of things.
Commissioner Mealy,
Um,
do you have something?
I think I read, there was a criticism that over and over again that we don't have enough people to man a truck appropriately. Two-person truck appropriately.
I'll
Anyway,
say, we're going to open up public comment again. We're not doing it right now. We're just doing it right.
I think I read somewhere that nowhere in Flagler County do they have 4 people on a truck.
It's not.
Can you
They
confirm
don't.
that?
Right, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Commissioner Mealy, if you don't mind me chiming in to help answer your question. NFPA is a national recommendation. So what they have to do is they have to take the big picture of fire departments located in the city of New York, Chicago, all the way down to, Groveland, Florida, or a small department in the middle of nowhere. And they need to make the best recommendation on an entire big picture. NFPA recommendation of 4 for an engine, that is in writing, but they're taking all fire departments into consideration for that. Generally, you're not going to see cities of our size. You're not going to see anyone in this county right now with 3. Flagler County just went from 2 people to 3. You'll see larger cities, a big metropolitan area that staffs that because of the size. And it's because there's so many what they called high risk, high hazard areas, like high rises and stuff like that. And they need that type of staffing. If the commission wants to put a 4th person on our fire truck, I will support that 100%. But, we understand that the most expensive part of public safety is staffing. And for what we do here, and I'm sure Chief Pace could attest to that, we're meeting the benchmarks with staffing of 3. But you're not going to see anyone in this area right now with staffing of 3, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
A remark was made about haphazard planning. I think we've had enough discussion here to say that that's not true. You seem to have it mapped out.
I mean, I spent much of the afternoon putting together the background material that Mr. Woodson's requested for the 5-year plan, including a template that Kathleen has requested by the end of the week. So I just went to my budget book to the 5-year replacement plan and put it into the template that the city now is currently using. So to say that there's not a replacement plan in place is not correct.
We're building it.
Well, we've been talking about it all night, so.
I just got here. I mean, I haven't even, all my stuff isn't here from Atlanta. Okay, so we're working on it. Maybe in the past there hadn't been published plans on a regular basis, but our goal here, as the chief said, is to do better and to have that information out there, and we are going to have it in time for the first reading of the budget.
Okay. And the remark was made that the ISX funds are inadequate. Can you?
I'm sorry, what funds?
The infrastructure surtax.
I'll take that. The infrastructure surtax funds have, according to Kathleen, been in the $200,000 range. It comes from the state sales tax. It's a portion of the state sales tax. And I think it's good to be cognizant of the fact that it's coming from that source. But the thing about that is that's looking at past trends. These funds go up and down based on the economy. It depends on how many sales transactions are happening. And with the population of Flagler County growing, that surtax pot, if you will, is going to grow. It also doesn't count other additional taxes that may be developed in the future. I think the county commission has looked at the public safety half-cent tax. So there are other sources that are out there. That source has grown over the years and probably will continue to grow. And of course, we will use it for anything legal that we can. But it has been a very good source to draw the funds from, and we've just kind of set aside a portion of that fund every year. And you can't just go take it and spend it for whatever you feel like. There are rules that go with that money from the state legislature. And I think that the use of the surtax money so far has been in line with those rules, and I can see those funds growing depending on the economy.
Okay, just one more remark. We talked about the ladder truck being good for the high-rise buildings. I remember shortly after we got this ladder truck down in Ocean Palm, there was a bad fire, and you couldn't get around the corner to the house. So if you didn't have the height, you wouldn't have been able to. Can you refresh our memory on that house?
Well, yeah, and that was a fire that Captain Cox had command in. I came in the wee hours that morning, but he had a lot of foliage in between those houses, and it was a tight area working through in there. The aerial did go up. The aerial did put up an elevated water stream, and it was able to get some of the knockdown going on the fire to where line crews could go in and take care of it further. Captain Cox also brought up the fire on South 20th last year, which was a great example too, because those are zero lot lines. And really, the houses that were the exposures right adjacent to the structure that was involved, they have no business still to be standing to this day if it wasn't for the use of that ladder truck.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Commissioner Bryan?
Yeah, there was a comment made regarding structural fires, and the comment was made that Flagler Beach cannot respond and have to depend on Palm Coast and Flagler County. Can you address that?
Well, Captain Cox in his slideshow gave about a half a dozen pictures of fires that we had gotten to early and had a quick knockdown. But, this happens on a regular basis, because what you don't see, and maybe we minimize it, and I'd hate to use the word ticky-tack calls, but if you have a room and contents fire, which is maybe a recliner in a room or a microwave in a kitchen, and these crews go in there within seconds and knock it down, that's not making the headlines. But it's a good call. And it's a call that we run on a regular basis. I will use this lightning strike that they had just a few weeks ago on South 7th. Those crews were there within 2 minutes. And they knocked that fire down, and they fought the extension on that third floor, and they saved a lot of property damage for that home. Did Flagler County and Palm Coast respond to that fire? They did. But they assisted. They worked overhaul with those crews. They worked rehab for those crews. The primary suppression crew was your Flagler Beach Fire Department.
Okay, that's all.
Okay, I got some questions. It was brought up, and I want to make sure I heard it right. It said that in the last, and I don't remember the time frame, it was a while, that Flagler Beach Fire Department did not have 2 units on a single call. Has it been a while since we've had 2 trucks of our own on a single call?
Well, we have multiple trucks on calls pretty regularly, but it's depending on what you're talking of, because he will be on command, I will be in command. You may have command on call, you have your ladder truck or your pumper that's going on call. In addition to that, what we do have at points, and I had mentioned it earlier, is we will have some of our trusted volunteer members bring us an additional truck if we needed added equipment, added water supply. Does that happen regularly? Not regularly, but it is available to us. That's, I guess, the best way I can answer that.
So there has been numerous calls, like say this last year, where we've had 2 of our own apparatus on one call.
Captain, you want to jump in on that one? I know we are out there at points.
Yeah, just to clarify, Commissioner Cooley, are you asking 2 engines, or are you asking like
2 engines or ladder, any combination of, not y'all's SUVs, like the trucks.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at our data. As Chief Fay said, our volunteers, they will be the ones that would bring up the engine if we have them available. They have done that in the past, but to give you an exact date, I couldn't, give you a factual date sitting right here now. But majority of the time, we do have, incidents that are contained with the crews that are responding, which is, a benefit that we have in our favor. So, but to answer your question of of having both units on scene. I couldn't answer that right now.
Okay, so, and again, this, what I'm going to bring up has been brought up to me. This is part of hypotheticals, just seeing y'all's thoughts and from my own education. So let's say Flagler Beach had a 2-truck model, right? We didn't, let's say hypothetically, we went to a third, right? And then we took that money and we put it towards staffing, bringing on an additional firefighter. Would we be in a better position doing that with, say, a quint and a pumper? Or would we be in a better position having 3 trucks with only 3 people?
If I'm following your question right, Chair, are you asking what we have in reserves right now to reallocate it from a truck into staffing?
To draw out the replacement schedule and reallocate that money towards additional staffing.
But you can't move that
Can't move
money.
that money for staffing. It is not allowed under the law.
Not infrastructure.
Right, not the infrastructure surtax, but the budgeted allowance for trucks you can. Like your total
I would have to
budget.
go back and check that. I don't think that we would be able to do that, and I just would have to do some additional research to
But
exactly
I'm not
answer the
talking
question.
transfer funds from one line to another. I'm saying if we budget $100,000 for a truck every year, instead of budgeting it for a truck every year, that if the replacement schedule gets spaced out, that $100,000 gets budgeted to staffing.
Well, the $100,000, the bulk of it comes from the surtax, and that may not be a legal use for the funds.
But when we budget the allowance for the truck every year, that's general fund, is it not? So it's all coming out of surtax?
Yes.
100,000 of it.
Okay.
Well, the majority of it is. And again, we just have to take a look at the issue.
There's a couple of things that come out of the general fund, and that's for the air pack reserves and some other equipment reserves.
Got it.
I think there's 3 line items.
It's air packs,
Add up
radio.
to about $60-some thousand a year.
Yeah, I know that we have some money for radios and other kind of
The
things
radios,
like
that's
that.
it.
Okay.
Commissioner, or Chair, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Just for clarification, if we were to hire an additional firefighter, would that additional firefighter meet the requirement to drive their own truck? Because you're talking 3 firefighters on 1 truck, correct? What would that 4th firefighter,
You'd have to hire 3.
you'd have to hire 3
Yeah,
additional
you have to hire one for every shift.
for every shift?
Yeah, to add the 4th.
Yeah,
So
okay.
that's 3 FTEs in addition.
No, but my question is, there's 3 firefighters on an apparatus, correct?
So are you asking if you were to hire 1 per shift and you had 4?
4 per shift. Is that your question, having 4 per shift?
Well, no, it would just be utilization
One.
of money instead of trucks to putting it into bodies, because
okay.
we seem to struggle with staffing. It's the rationale. It's not really
Okay.
the specifics. I think
Okay.
we're getting too deep into the weeds on it. It's more of just the rationale of, are we better off with additional apparatus, or are we better off with additional bodies, is kind of the question that I get from the public.
You can't do it because
Well,
surtax money.
if you want to do it with bodies, you have to go to the millage. If you want to do it with, if you want to sink the funds into the equipment, we use the surtax. I mean, that's how it's been done, and that's the restraint that Tallahassee places on some of the funds.
All right, and this is just vetting all the ideas that have been brought to us to make sure we put everything on the table. We're already after 7, we have another agenda item.
Well,
Commissioners, how do y'all feel about that?
Just save me 2 minutes for a closing comment
I think you're jumping ahead.
before you're done.
Well, we're talking about,
Well,
we need to
since-
get going on this next agenda item. Are you guys okay with
I'm
that?
done.
Okay. And who's taking that agenda item? Is that going to be you, Captain? Because there's this discussion about the ISO,
Well, that's kind of what we've been doing.
or did you
I think
combine
we've
it?
already covered the item, Chairman. Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Point
Yes.
of order, you have 2 agenda items, and you got to treat them like 2 agenda items.
Do we have anything on that needs
I
covered?
don't have anything further. The presentation, I believe, covered it, and we've been discussing it, so I have nothing further.
Okay, but what I do want to do is, I know Commissioner Bellhumor, you had some comments you were holding on that second item, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so let's get our questions out of the way. We'll have public comment, and then we can wrap up, right? You all good with that?
So
Okay.
far, I'm good.
All right, so Commissioner Belhumeur.
I guess my biggest question is, if we were to follow through with what they have proposed, the ISO would not change. That's my understanding. And however, if we were to not do that, the ISO would not change. Is that an accurate statement?
I did respond to this recently. If there were any changes or improvement, it would only be a minor improvement to the ISO, and that would be based on just a couple of factors and speaking to the ISO corporate office, a representative with ISO. That would be based on the new truck having some added safety features and that the new truck would be fully stocked. Those would be the only two variables for improvement.
Did that answer your question?
So it wouldn't put us in another category.
Well, you know, and I'm going to kick this back to Captain Cox, because when we did our last ISO inspection, again, Cox is running operations, we weren't too far off from a 2. So with some of the improvements to training, if there were minor improvements with the rig, I don't know if it's entirely out of the question that we couldn't be possibly maybe to look to the next level. But Cap, you want to jump in on that?
Yes, sir. After looking at the report based on our last inspection, with the corrections that we make with the training allotment, I'm forecasting that if we maintain what we have and stick to this plan, that we would increase our ISO score to a 2. We were very, very close to a 2, and we did get penalized for those the training. We also missed some easy points with some fire prevention that we've come to a solution with to gain full credit for that. So after running an analysis, it's my projection that we will be at ISO 2 at our next ISO inspection.
Which is when?
Well, ISO kind of jumps on you and they surprise you. You can request an ISO inspection, but generally what happens is ISO will send you a letter saying this is going to be an inspection coming up, prepare for it. And generally they kind of hit all the agencies around the area. It's typically every 5 years, give or take. I couldn't give you a date, especially with COVID and all the pandemic, but forecasting coming pretty soon. So, but based on, again, what we've run in the past, we would project to be a 2 with everything.
Okay. Commissioner Belhumeur?
That's it for now.
That's all of it?
That's my questions related to ISO. Yes.
Okay. Commissioners, Mayor, any other questions? Right? Okay. Let's open this up, public comment. Any members of the public wish to speak on this? If you can, please state your name and address.
Tracy Callian, excuse me. Tracy Callian, 1228 South Central. Hold on. Okay, let's see if I can speak. Okay. I did not plan on speaking tonight. I just came to hear the pros and cons and know what's going on with the city. What I'm hearing tonight is it sounds like our city is in a big transition. We're talking about things based on facts in numbers from 19 and 20. I know as a resident and as a realtor that we've already got a large growth happening right now, never mind all the new construction that we all just approved. And that really needs to be taken in consideration. My son is a firefighter. And I will tell you from experience, you guys right now have the money to buy this because you planned for it for 5 years. I don't know what the next 5, 10, 20 years plan looks like because you don't have one yet. When the new city manager and Pacey and Cox are able to put something together and you can plan and budget for it, it will fall in place. You've got the people coming. You need to be prepared. Because I'll tell you, you have all the time in the world to figure this out now. What you don't you have the death of a resident or a firefighter because you don't have the plan in place, because the truck broke down, because there's a million becauses. And I would think that they're the experts on knowing what they need to do their job. And if they thought they needed more people versus trucks, maybe this would be a different conversation. But I think when you're making this decision, you need to take their expertise into consideration. Nobody likes to spend money. Nobody wants their taxes to be raised in the future. But what we don't want to see, we've seen so many disasters in this town, all over the country. We need to be prepared. And that's all.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of the public wish to speak on this? If you can, come on, please state your name and address. Mr. Allen.
Paul Allen. And quick question, maybe you can follow up later for the chief or captain. I was interested in clarifying the mileage on the demo that you're interested in purchasing, and also the hours on that vehicle.
It was 3,000 was the miles.
1,000. If I could, Robert Bogus with Pierce is actually here tonight. I hate to put you on the spot. Robert, do you know the hours of that truck off the top of your head? Okay. Okay.
Maybe we could get that information and publish it or distribute it, or let me know. I'm just
Captain
curious.
or Chief, can you all get that to Mr.
Absolutely,
Allen? Okay.
yeah.
Great, thank you. In the recent 21-22 budget book, there was a presentation by the Flagler Beach Fire Department, page 2, stating the city of Flagler Beach is a current ISO of rating 3. That is where you find a statement about the department must be equipped with 2 engines or 2 pumpers in one area, as well as a statement about the engine companies. And finally, the statement about the equipment will allow the fire department to achieve the highest score possible on page 3. The fire department has worked very hard to improve an ISO rating, and they need to be congratulated on that, while remembering it's the taxpayers' dollars that allowed this to happen. There's always a trade-off at the expense of the Flagler Beach taxpayers. How much are you willing to spend to improve the ISO rating at no recognizable benefit to the citizens, our tax rate, and our safety? I've lived here for over 10 years, and I can assure you that my homeowner's insurance premium has not dropped in 2019 following the 2018 ISO audit. When you look at the total credits from the 2018 ISO audit, you'll find the total for Flagler Beach Fire Department as 77.19 out of 105.5. Using the chart provided by ISO, audit page 3, a score of 77.9 falls 7.919 points over the required total for an ISO rating of 3. In fact, to drop to an ISO rating of 4, they'll need to lose 7.19 points. If that statement is correct, in order for the city to continue to provide the benefit of reduction in home insurance costs to its residents, the Flagler Beach Fire Department must be equipped with 2 engines and 1 aerial unit within its fleet. It's true the department would have to receive 10 out of 10 points. The reason why the credit for the engine companies is 6 is because of automatic mutual aid. A fire company includes engines and personnel. There's no way for the score for the ISO under Section 513 credit for engine companies is predicated on equipment. A fire company includes more than equipment, it includes staffing. We showed earlier that more than 1 truck leaves the fire department at any one time. Therefore, ISO is giving credit for the mutual aid as a second company, also discussed in the ISO audit. As referenced in the ISO audit, I have concerns the fire department is not in compliance with the National Fire Protection Association standards. As such, I received correspondence from the fire department stating that the NFPA documents are just guidelines. Well, if this is their understanding, then we should also understand the same applies to the ISO audit. They're just guidelines. I've been involved with firefighter injuries and deaths, and I can assure you that investigators have and will use NFPA standards as a nationally recognized document to determine investigative outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Kim, if you can, just state your name and address.
Kim Carney, Flagler Beach. Just like to clear up a couple things. You do have CAD reports from 5 or 6 structure fires in Flagler Beach, not Flagler County, was one in Plum Coast, that proved to you that only 1 engine or ladder went to the scene. They have to document who shows up, when they're en route. It's a long mess of paperwork, I know, but it was proof that Flagler Beach sends one vehicle, one fire company, which includes the vehicle and the staff, firefighters. I also would like to point out that in the packet, there is an extensive replacement plan for 3 vehicles, and not slighting anyone's intelligence, but when you put a vehicle in service, you start the accrual for that vehicle the year it's put in service. So if you're going to buy every 4 years or 5 years because you've got $500,000 in an accrual, what's happening to those other 2 trucks that have just sacrificed that whole 5 years and have no accrual, and you think you're going to have $1 million to replace that ladder truck in 7 years if you don't start accruing for it in 2022? Just do the math. I'm just asking you to do the math because it's a lot bigger than $100,000 a year, and the graph is in there. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. Getting back to ISO, ISO does not mandate how many staff or how much equipment is needed in a city. It rates how the department is working. The detail that you have in your packet will also show that we received a 0.44 out of 0.5 for a reserve pumper. Was that 2 pumpers or was it 1 pumper? If we have 2 pumpers, engine 111 and engine 11, why didn't we get a score of 4? That was the highest score you could have got. We didn't get that. One of them was used as credit for engine company, which is part of section 513 of the ISO. The credit for the ladder service is 1.44 out of 4.0. In fact, the department received a 0 for 553 credit for reserve ladder and service trucks. The ladder truck is not an aerial. It is 25 feet short of being an aerial, and we all made that decision in 2015. It was a noted, understood, accepted flaw with the Quint. More importantly than the impact of keeping the fleet at 3, fire trucks, which will not impact the overall ISO score, is the lost points for training, company personnel, and deployment analysis, all of which the department has complete control over. With only 2.8 more points in the fire department scoring section of the audit of the Flagler Beach Fire Department, Matt, I must be thinking of Matt, could be an ISO rating of 2 on their next audit. That's already been explained, which is attainable with the higher scores in development and training, deployment. Under section 2C, in the purchase justification, there is a statement, and I got to tell you, this is really what got me on this bandwagon, if you would. In your justification from your fire department, you gave 2 statements, or 3, that's one said you must buy the truck. The other one said if you don't buy the truck, then you have a chance of lowering and not being able to have the homeowners expect their discount. In my opinion, those comments were borderline threatening. Why would you ever tell your citizens, if you don't buy me this truck? It's just like the video you watched. If you don't build me a building, all our rates are going to go to hell because we didn't build a new fire department. But anyway, it says, while each household is different, carrying an ISO rating of 3, homeowners can expect on average a 30% savings in fire protection portion of their home insurance. You'll also find in your packet references to a lot of other factors that are taken into effect. but to throw that number out there just did not make any sense to me. When asked to prove that statement, the fire chief provided the following statement. Quote, according to our last ISO representative, that would be the sales rep that comes around and sells us ISO auditing. Insurance savings for the homeowners can vary from house to house. The 30% average is based on the ISO rating of 3 and only speaks, obviously, to the fire protection portion of the homeowner's policy. This statement cannot be substantiated even on the ISO website. This generalization of savings and homeowners insurance is one of the justifications used to make this purchase. The math does not add up. Losing the score for the entire fire company of 6 would not even make our department an ISO rating of a 4. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker, if you can, please state your name and address.
Jim Carney, Flagler Beach. A couple of things that were brought up in the discussion period to go along with what the mayor was leading to. How many people in here, raise your hand, have ever bought a used car?
Have ever bought a used car?
Ever bought a used car? So you're all just buying somebody else's problems. That is the most unsubstantiated fact I've ever heard. These trucks have requirements that they must pass, as we hear from our own fire department, and you ain't selling a lemon. If you do, you're going to go to jail because it's a life-saving device. So let's take a look at used trucks. I did a lot of time in North and South Carolina, and there must be 5 companies, probably maybe none now, but 20 years ago, you couldn't drive 150 miles without seeing lots with 16, 18, 20 good-looking trucks, where they sold them, they consolidated, they were annexed. There's a lot of reasons that a fire truck doesn't live out its life with its original owner. That's one point. The other point is, which will be really at an end of this, this is from the Orlando Fire Department. The Orlando Fire Department announcement of their 10th year in a row rated a number 1. Not just by ISO, but by 6 other organizations. And there's probably in this report, and probably in the fire department itself, justification to consider them the best fire department in the world. They are way head and shoulders above everybody. So I would assume we have a relationship of some sort with them, being they're 35, 40 miles away, that they could really help us with a lot of little things that our guys, how experienced they may be, would not be at that level yet. And I'll get into a little bit of formal stuff here. There are numerous articles and sources in your packet that will show how fire protection section is only one of many factors. One of the factors it doesn't explain is 3 versus 4, 2 in, 2 out. Firefighters know what we're talking about. The 2 in, 2 out is confusing to me, which means a truck that pulls up with 3 doesn't attack inside. Would that be correct?
Well, am I allowed to answer that question?
You want to take it, Cap?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
That is correct. The state of Florida, and with NFPA, there are some state adoptions that the state requires as law. And there's Florida statute and Florida administrative code. The state of Florida does require, if there is not a life threat, so that means that there is no chance that somebody is inside that house, or the fire has expanded past the incipient phase, which is the beginning phase.
Room of origin.
Correct. That you are required to have a 2-out writ, which means 2 firefighters are fully dressed out in the event a firefighter has an emergency. The way that we operate here is Flagler County Fire Rescue has 2 firefighters on their ambulance. So if we have a fire, our ladder truck, our firefighters, go inside, search, or put out that fire, while Flagler County is the 2 out. Now, two out can be identified as myself if I'm dressed out in my gear, or my fire chief. Yes, sir.
Kevin, if we can pause, I think we're getting away from truck discussion.
Yep, absolutely. Yes, sir.
Are we?
No, this is trucks,
This
about
is-
staffing.
Well,
That answer is sufficient.
Okay. Staffing
We're
is,
25
staffing
minutes
is,
over when we said we would.
wait, staffing is different than trucks, so we want to keep the discussion about the truck.
The efficiency of the truck is what the staffing is. I'm sorry. They tie together directly. I'll move forward. This will be about 2 minutes. The video that we sent to you explained about the insurance premiums. When ISO numbers really due to your homeowner's insurance is very little, quite honestly. The video you saw was an investigative report that shows a city with an ISO rating, their fire department, of 1. Their fire department said their ISO rating would drop to a 3 if they weren't built a new firehouse to cover something that had been annexed. The reporter met with an insurance broker from the state of North Carolina, certified, and the broker took a house and ran it through the computer program, which is issued by ISO. The slide you saw in there marked video C2C shows that from a 1 to a 6, the payment was $311. From a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a 6. A 7, it jumped because it's a worse score, $46 to $357, and a 10 doubled to $611, which makes sense. It's almost an uninsurable position. It's inaccessible. You can't get a truck there, whatever. When you look at item 513, which is the main justification for why E11 must be replaced, we believe the dispute is over what is an engine company exactly. The department is using 2 engine companies to request a fleet of 2 engines and a ladder truck. On page 13 of the ISO report, it states, to be recognized, pumper apparatus must meet general criteria of NFPA 1901. It also states the greatest value of A, B, or C. Below, you've got that.
Jim, we got to wrap this up.
We are.
You're going very long.
Okay. The Hollywood presentation and the questions to the fire department took the bulk of it up. So the bottom line is Orlando has a statement, which I will close with, since we are so short on time. And the statement says, because we're fixated on ISO, the schedule is a fire insurance rating tool and is not intended to analyze the aspects of a comprehensive public fire protection program. It should be used for purposes, not be used for purposes other than insurance ratings. Firefighters love ISO. The insurance companies love ISO. Homeowners don't even know what it is. They don't. Ask around. In that video, you saw them being interviewed. Nobody knows what it is. It's a factor of insurance.
Jim, okay.
That's it.
All right, thank you. All right, if you can, please state your name and address.
Donna Schneider, South Daytona Avenue. Real quick before I get started, some comments that were made in the middle there. I just want you all to consider it. In quick math, some of the conversations, if we kept 3 trucks in a fleet, our 2006 will be 25 years old in 2031. Our 2016 will be 15 years old in 2031. Our 2020 would be 15 years old in 2035. You're buying 2 trucks in 2031, and 4 years later, you're buying another one, if you proceed the way you discussed this earlier. The other thing I'd like to bring to your attention for the years of service is it was told to me multiple times that because we live in a saltwater area, a lot of the wear on our trucks is corrosion. It doesn't matter how much you drive it. It's years of corrosion. So keep all that in mind. So now I'm going to move on. In the 2018 ISO report, as has been stated, we received a 77.19 out of 105.5 possible points. We have an ISO rating of 3. Again, to get an ISO rating of 3, you have to be between 79 and 79.99 points. So we received 0.44 points out of a total of 0.5 points for our reserve truck. If we lose that truck, if we don't have that reserve truck, our score would be reduced by 0.44 points. That would put us at a 76.5. We're still well within a 3 rating. If we purchase a new truck and we get all 0.5, we've only added 0.06 points to our ISO score. We're still a 3. We haven't done anything. We could, however, do something with training, which you've already discussed. You've been, going to great lengths to work on. But part of training includes pre-fire inspections, reports, sketches of commercial, of industrial, institutional, and similar buildings, not 1 to 4 family dwellings. So we ask you to work on those scores. See if you can do something with those numbers. At the end of the day, if you got all those, we got a 5.97 out of 9. If we got that 3.03 points available, we'd still be a 3. We haven't changed our score, but we have served our community and we've done it at a lot less cost. At the end of the day, we're not trying to get an A on a test. We're trying to provide the best service in the most fiscally responsible way. And the question is, do we need a truck to do that? You talk about getting an ISO 2. Great. Didn't change anything. We still pay the same insurance. We still have the same number of men on the truck. Nothing's changed except for that truck sitting there. So today we ask you, do not move forward to purchase and have a fleet of 3 engines. We ask you to wait until Engine 11 is fully funded. The equipment from Engine 11 can be placed on the new truck once you purchase it. In 2016, Ladder 11 was purchased to be the frontline vehicle. It has a lot of useful years left. The city can set up an accrual for a 6-year replacement plan for Ladder 11. At that time, the city can annually reserve money from the infrastructure surtax account for their accrual of 2 trucks. It keeps the equipment up to the standards for a 12-year replacement, and hence it provides a safer environment for our firefighters. The city can donate Engine 111. It can be used to train other firefighters. Flagler Beach could look at other ways to handle medical calls. You don't need a fire truck for medical calls. The goal should be to use the equipment as it's intended. Use fire trucks to put out fires. I urge you to remove our reserve truck from service. I urge you to do the most fiscally responsible thing for the citizens of the city. Don't purchase another truck just to have a new model in reserve. Instead, determine if Engine 11 meets our needs as a backup truck. If it does, we don't need to buy a truck at all. If it doesn't, then trade in Engine 11, and you'll have 2 trucks. It'll not only eliminate the need to take money out of the infrastructure tax fund, you'll also have a larger fund in there if you need it for something else. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this? All right, if you can, please state your name and address.
Yeah, I'm Randall Stroud. I live at 2028 South Flagler Avenue. Been a lot of good things been said, a lot of people with a lot of expertise that have came in, a lot of attention to detail, and I appreciate that. I'm kind of a big picture guy. I'm a retired captain, U.S. Navy. I was an anti-terrorism guy, which meant I did a lot of public safety stuff, usually with other foreign countries, so I did an opportunity to do, my last mutual aid agreement was in Poland, so deal with that. At any rate, a lot of good things have been said here, but here's one of the issues we have to consider. We're not getting smaller. We don't need less trucks. There's some good ideas about how we should approach this. I appreciate that. But to have less trucks as we get bigger, it's not going to be a good thing, and this problem is not going to go away, and they're not going to get less expensive. And to have a truck that it takes a minute before you can start moving it, a fire does a lot of things in a minute. I was a cop in civilian life, but I wasn't a firefighter. I had to deal with it. And I'll tell you what, that's a terrible minute to wait. And I think that this is something we need to consider as we go forward. I don't think we can wait. But that's up to you guys, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Randall. Anyone else wish to speak on this? Last call. All right, close public comment. Any last comments or questions? Commissioner Bryan?
I'll start off. It seems like this whole thing is turning into ISO discussion. Of course, that's what the agenda item was on. And I'm very fiscally conservative, and I think about every dollar that we spend. That's one of the reasons I got up here. But I also concern about the individuals that live in our city. And as the captain just said here, our city, in spite of the fact that a lot of folks would like to see Flagler Beach stay small and keep the small city charm, it's growing. We got John Anderson. It's growing. Whether you like it or not, for how long it's going to take, some homes are going to come out there, and a lot of residents are going to come. Roberts Road, there are residents coming, condos and homes. Colbert is already here. It's crowded, and it's growing. This little city is growing. So our footprint within the city may not be changing, but our population is certainly growing. The visitors that we host are growing. We have a lot of people coming to Flagler Beach. And I would like to say, I moved here 5 years ago because I like the quaint little town. I was in St. Augustine every day this week, working. And the place is a madhouse. It's a nice place to visit now, but it's growing like crazy. Every single footprint of dirt in St. Johns County is being developed. My point is, we're going to grow here, we're going to continue to grow, and we have to prepare for it. And I guess the last question I have, and we all have to think about this, with the exception of this lady here, and maybe Eric and Debbie, we're all in our 70s. I take pretty good care of myself, but I also keep in mind that I could have a heart attack anywhere in Flagler Beach. Any one of us could, a stroke. And in those particular cases, seconds count. And my question is, how much is a life worth? How much is a life worth? Because if an ambulance or a fire truck or the garbage truck has to come to you to save your life, you want them to send every single piece of apparatus they have because you want you or your loved one to survive. And those are the things I think about. Sure, the ISO is important. I talked to my insurance agents about it, and they told me how much it's going to cost, how much it's going to reduce my insurance. That's not important to me because I can afford it, but it's not that big deal anyway. What's important is life. And that's what I'm basing my decisions on, is saving lives in Flagler Beach. And those are all the comments I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have comments?
I had some things I think that need to be responded to.
All right, Commissioner Mealy.
Somebody talked about raising taxes. Once again, this is not coming out of ad valorem money. So it's not raising your taxes. I wish we weren't having this emphasis on the ISO. I don't know what even started the emphasis on the ISO. I think that's a nice thing. If it's helping my homeowner's insurance, that's nice. But I would not vote to buy a new fire truck or not buy a new fire truck based simply on an ISO rating. I'm more interested in having a well-run department that can accomplish its job. And so I really wish this whole discussion on ISO had never started. And you remember what it was like having people talk? And it was brought up again about waiting. And we were able to get a demo truck that's $23,000 less than it would have been. We don't know that that would happen again. We don't know about the builder's donation, whether that will hang out or, so I think there's too many what ifs, but those seem to have gotten glossed over. So I wanted to make sure we mentioned them again. I don't have any questions, though, just comments.
That's it? Okay. Commissioner Bellhumor, Mayor Johnston? Commissioner Bellinger, you got 10 pages of notes.
No, I'm only going through the 10 pages, but it just, I know to Commissioner Bryan's thoughts, we are growing, I get that. But the fire department seems to be growing a little quicker than we are as revenue, revenue streams coming in. Their goal is to grow at the fire department. I get that. They want to become ALS. They want to add firefighters, which, by the way, they told us they didn't need when they bought the ladder truck. But they want to share a fire station with Palm Coast over on Roberts Road. The budget has grown over 100% or doubled in 5 years, and that doesn't include 2 new fire trucks at $1.1 million. Remember, we are paying double for fire service in the city. I saw in their handout that we were somewhat equal with the county as far as cost per household, but in the end, you add those two numbers together. So we're talking about adding a 3rd truck to the replacement schedule, and that would be indefinite. I suggest that we buy the new truck, sell or trade engine 11 and 111, and have 2 almost brand new trucks over there, and then start your replacement schedule from there, or and buy another truck when the development generates the revenue to pay for it. So that's my thoughts.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Staff?
Yeah, one more.
Commissioner Mealy?
Bobby or Steve. I don't know where this $1 million is coming from. Maybe I'm missing something. Can we go over this replacement schedule again? We have 3 trucks.
We being city administration, the fire department, and hopefully with support of the commission, are looking to get not a $100,000 contribution October 1st, but $76,600, I think, to pay off this current truck that we're looking at right now. As we get into 2022, 23 budget year, the request is going to come from the fire department that reserves begin again in the fire truck reserve at $100,000 a year. Mm-hmm. What we're wanting to evaluate, which the next thing is going to be a pumper to be replaced, is that we have 6 or 7 years to build that up at $100,000 a year. And if we had $600,000 or $700,000 in the kitty, even with the cost of increase to trucks and the cost of raw materials, that is a number that is in the ballpark. Now, at that time, what we've discussed is if we need to reevaluate that truck and we could buy another year or 2 and make that reserve even stronger, great. Ladder 11 is not scheduled for another 14 to 15 years. So once we've hit that 7-8 year mark, we would build that up again to that. And just to be clear on the ladder, it wasn't $1 million. It wasn't even $600,000. So
Now, they're saying that there were 2 that had come up at the same time.
The trucks are split out in about 14 to 15 years. But as Captain Cox and I talked about before we even came to this meeting, the stance of reevaluation for the fire department, remember, this is the hardest time that we're dealing with because we had a 30-year-old Grumman that we got rid of, and we now have a 25-year-old Pierce. So is our rolling stock getting better? Of course we are. Are we going to have better opportunity at reevaluating trucks when we're coming to the point that reserves are built up? I think we'll be better for it for engine 11. But even still, we're not looking to have that conversation for many years, several years out.
There will not come a time, because I'm not picturing it this way, there will not come a time when we're replacing 2 trucks in the same year.
Not with the schedule that we have in
That's
place,
what I
ma'am.
thought. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions or comments? Look for motion.
I make a motion that, well, we actually, this is a workshop, so we can't.
Adjourn.
Okay, sorry. I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
All right, we're adjourned. Yeah, that's the only motion I was looking for. Motion to get out of here.
Yeah, let's get that.